My name is Phil, and before I tell you how everything changes after your first 10,000, I want to take you somewhere. Not physically, but emotionally. I want you to walk with me through the timeline of a life shaped by scarcity and rebuilt by choice. Because nothing about this story is simply about money. Money is the surface, money is the doorway. But what waits behind that doorway is a version of yourself you haven't met yet, and meeting that version is what really changes everything. I want you to imagine this moment, a dim apartment kitchen at 1:40 a.m. The light above the stove is the only thing turned on. It flickers sometimes, but tonight it's steady. On the counter sits a wallet with $17 in it, a few coins, a receipt folded 3 times, a half-empty jar of instant coffee you promised yourself to stretch for another week. And me, standing there, hands pressed against the counter, feeling a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working late, but from living in a constant state of almost enough money, almost enough time, almost enough energy, almost okay. I remember staring at that wallet thinking, how long can I keep doing this? Not dramatically, not with tears, just numb, just tired. And the wildest part, I wasn't even suffering by comparison. No one around me thought I was struggling. They thought I was doing fine. That's the trick about financial stress. It's invisible. You look normal on the outside, but inside you're constantly calculating, constantly bracing, constantly trying to solve a math problem that changes every day. That version of me, months before my first $10,000, didn't know something crucial, that his life was about to change in ways too quiet and too profound to predict. But before we get there, I want to show you the whole transformation from the ground up, because the ground is where I started, and maybe it's where you are too. You see, a lot of people think hitting $10,000 is a victory moment, a triumphant milestone, fireworks, cheering, confetti. But the truth is, the transformation begins long before the number. It begins in the small, unglamorous decisions. It begins in moments like the one I'm about to tell you. I was on my way to work one morning, cold day, gray sky. My shoes were so worn on the soles that if the pavement was wet, I could feel the water seeping through. I remember glancing at a pair of newer shoes online the night before. They were $40 and closing the tab immediately. Too much, I told myself, maybe next month. That morning, walking through puddles, I heard a quiet voice in my head say, are you going to live like this forever? And for the first time, instead of ignoring that voice, I listened. That question echoed all day. At work, on the bus, lying in bed that night, I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything started shifting. Not because I bought the shoes, I didn't, but because I realized something quietly devastating. I wasn't living, I was coping. And coping is not living. It wasn't long after that moment that I made a decision I had never made before. It wasn't big, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't dramatic, it was simple. I would save $5, just five, one single paper bill into a separate envelope. That's it. No spreadsheets, no apps, no pressure, just $5. And that 5 became 10, 10 became 24, 24 became 112, and eventually the envelope became an actual savings account. And that account, after months of struggle and discipline and starting over dozens of times, became the first $10,000 I had ever seen with my own name on it. But the number, $10,000, was just the surface. What happened inside me during that journey was the real miracle. Let me tell you something I learned in those early months. Saving money isn't about willpower, it's about identity. Every time you choose the future over the impulse of the moment, you're rewriting the story of who you are. Every time you delay a purchase, you cast a vote for the person you're becoming. Every time you say not yet, you're building a version of yourself that trusts your own consistency. That's why the first 1,000 feels impossible, the first 5,000 feels unreal, and the first 10,000 feels like a personality transplant, because by the time you reach it, you're no longer the same person who began. You are calmer, you are slower, you are wiser, you are grounded. And the world doesn't change around you, you change within the world. When I hit my first $10,000, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood: safety. I want to describe this feeling to you because if you've never felt it, you may not understand how transformative it is. Imagine every muscle in your body relaxing, not because you told them to, but because they no longer needed to hold tension. Imagine waking up without immediately checking your bank account in fear. Imagine sitting in a cafe and choosing what you want instead of what's cheapest. Imagine breathing without doing mental calculations. That's the difference $10,000 makes. It doesn't make you rich, it makes you secure. It gives you just enough distance from the edge of survival that for the first time in your adult life, you can exhale. And with that exhale comes clarity, and with clarity comes transformation. I didn't notice the changes immediately. They crept in quietly, like dawn. One morning I realized I hadn't panicked about money in weeks. Another day I caught myself humming while cooking breakfast. I hadn't hummed in years. Another time I was talking with a friend and realized I didn't feel the need to pretend everything was okay. I was okay. And that was when I understood something most people never realize. Financial stability is not about wealth, it's about removing fear. And once fear is gone, your real personality begins to emerge. Not the version shaped by stress, not the version shaped by anxiety, not the version shaped by survival mode, the real you. I didn't know who the real Phil was until then. He was patient, he was thoughtful, he was a good listener, he enjoyed quiet mornings, he liked long walks, he dreamed big but peacefully, not desperately. He wasn't reactive, he wasn't defensive, he wasn't ashamed, he wasn't scared. He was someone I actually liked, and that may sound simple, but let me tell you this: liking yourself for the first time is one of the most emotionally disorienting experiences you can have. Because once you like yourself, you stop tolerating the things you once accepted: people who drain you, jobs that diminish you, habits that sabotage you, expectations that suffocate you, environments that limit you. You stop shrinking, you stop apologizing, you stop surviving, and you start living. Let me show you an example of this change. Months after hitting $10,000, my boss called me into his office. He handed me an additional project, one that belonged to someone else. Before that milestone, I would have said yes immediately, even if it meant working late nights or sacrificing my health. But this time, something in me shifted. I calmly said, I can take it on, but only if we adjust my workload or reconsider my compensation. The words surprised even me, not because they were bold, but because they were honest, and they came from a place of calm self respect. My boss blinked, slightly stunned, not because I was rude, but because I was different, more grounded, more certain, more stable. He agreed. And that moment changed everything: not the raise, not the workload, the identity shift, the understanding that I wasn't disposable. Saving $10,000 didn't give me power, it revealed the power I already had but never believed I deserved. And this transformation bled into every part of my life, especially relationships. Let me tell you about the night I understood how profoundly saving had changed me. I was sitting on a park bench with a friend from my past, someone I used to call a brother. He started complaining about life, about money, about bad luck, about people being against him. I tried to offer solutions, but he didn't want solutions. He wanted sympathy. He wanted validation for staying the same. He wanted me to agree that he was a victim of circumstances instead of a participant in his own decisions. Months before $10,000, I would have matched his energy, complained with him, bonded over negativity, but now I saw everything differently. I saw patterns. I saw excuses. I saw behaviors I used to have. I saw a version of myself I didn't want to be anymore. And for the first time, I felt distance from him. Not emotional distance, but psychological distance. We were not the same anymore. Not because I had money, but because I had accountability. And accountability separates people faster than success. That night, walking home under the orange street lights, I realized something painful but true. Some relationships can't survive your growth. And it's not because you changed. It's because you stopped participating in the behaviors that kept the relationship alive. Saving $10,000 forces you to grow, and growth forces you to let go. But with letting go comes space. And into that space, new people arrive. People who match your emotional stability, people who don't feed on chaos, people who don't drain your energy, people who treat you with respect because you treat yourself with respect. That's how Mara entered my life, quietly, unexpectedly, on a random Tuesday afternoon in a bookstore cafe. I was flipping through an old poetry book when she sat down at the table next to me. She glanced at my book and said, "That one is heavier than it looks." I laughed and said, "Aren't they all?" She smiled in a way that made everything feel lighter. We talked for hours, not about money, not about careers, not about surface level nonsense. We talked about fears, childhood, music, why people rush through life, why silence feels intimate, why scars tell stories. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't self conscious. I wasn't trying to impress her. I wasn't performing. I was just present. That's the gift of stability. It makes space for connection, real connection. When you're not drowning, you can look up. You can see people. You can let yourself be seen. Weeks later, she told me something that stayed with me. You don't rush your words, Phil. Most people do, but not you. You speak like you trust time. I smiled because I realized she was right. Stability had taught me patience, not just financial patience, emotional patience, the patience to let conversations unfold, the patience to let people reveal themselves, the patience to let life develop without forcing outcomes, the patience to be present instead of anxious. And that patience changed the way I experienced everything. Meals tasted different, music felt richer, walks felt mindful, conversations felt meaningful, stillness felt comforting, life felt like something I was participating in, not racing through. But the biggest transformation, the one I didn't expect, was this. After saving $10,000, I stopped being afraid of myself. That may sound strange, but let me explain. For most of my life, I felt like I was one bad day, one mistake, one unexpected bill away from collapsing. Not just financially, emotionally. I was fragile, I was breakable, and that fragility made me scared of myself, scared of my impulses, scared of my reactions, scared of my limitations, scared of my vulnerability. But stability strengthens you in invisible ways. One day I realized something extraordinary. I trusted myself, not my circumstances, not my employer, not luck, myself. I trusted that I could handle difficulty. I trusted that I could solve problems. I trusted that I could stay consistent. I trusted that I could rebuild if needed. And that trust, the trust in myself, was more valuable than the money itself. Because money can disappear, but self trust rebuilds it. Self trust rebuilds anything. Let me show you how this played out. I was walking home one night when my car broke down. The old me would have spiraled immediately. How will I afford this? What will I cut? How will I survive this week? But this time I simply sighed, grabbed my bag, locked the car, and started walking. Not panicked, not frustrated, just calm. I knew I could handle it. I had built a buffer, not just financially, but mentally. And that realization that I was no longer fragile felt like stepping into a new body, a stronger one, a quieter one, a more grounded one. And that's when I finally understood something that changed my entire perspective on life. Stability doesn't happen when your circumstances change. Stability happens when you change in response to your circumstances. And saving your first $10,000 is one of the most powerful catalysts for that transformation. Let me tell you another moment that shaped me. I was sitting on my balcony late at night. The city was quiet except for the distant hum of cars. I had a cup of tea in my hands. Not coffee this time, tea. A small detail, but important. Tea is gentler, softer, calmer. I was staring at the buildings, thinking about the years behind me, years of scraping by, years of survival mode, years of restless nights and silent battles. And then it hit me, not all at once, slowly, softly, like dawn. I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I felt safe in my own skin, safe in my own life, safe in my own ability to navigate the world. And in that moment, I felt something I will never forget: gratitude, not for the money, but for the journey, for the discipline I didn't know I had, for the patience I didn't know I could develop, for the resilience that had been sleeping inside me, waiting to be awakened, and for the scared younger version of myself who kept going even when things felt pointless. I felt gratitude for him, for the boy who saved coins in a jar, who lived through instability, who survived uncertainty, who carried burdens he didn't deserve. I whispered into the night, "Thank you. I've got it from here." And that was the moment, right there on that balcony, when I realized I had healed. People think financial milestones are external, but the truth is, the most meaningful milestones happen internally. They happen quietly. They happen when you're alone. They happen in moments when life feels ordinary. They happen when you finally realize that you're no longer the person you used to be. And saving your first $10,000 is one of the most powerful internal milestones you can reach, because it forces you to become the kind of person who can generate stability. And once you become that person, you never go back. But let me take you even deeper, because the transformation doesn't end at stability. Stability is just the doorway. Once the fear is gone, once the noise is quiet, once the panic dissolves, something else begins, something most people never talk about. You begin to dream, not the desperate dreams of needing escape, not the frantic dreams of wanting more money. Real dreams, dreams built on vision, not fear, dreams built on clarity, not survival, dreams built on your authentic desires, not the pressures of the world. I started dreaming again. And let me tell you something: dreaming from a place of stability feels completely different from dreaming in survival mode. When you dream from scarcity, your dreams are shaped by fear. "I want a better job" actually means "I'm scared I won't afford the next emergency." "I want a nicer home" means "I'm tired of living in discomfort." "I want more money" means "I'm tired of feeling unsafe." But when you dream from stability, your dreams come from purpose, identity, vision. I started dreaming about building something meaningful, helping people who were like me, creating a life that didn't just avoid pain, but pursued joy. I started dreaming about travel, about writing, about the kind of person I wanted to become. I started imagining a life filled with peace, not pressure. And for the first time, those dreams felt possible, not guaranteed, but possible. Possibility is a form of freedom, and that freedom began at $10,000. Let me tell you something else that changed: my relationship with time. Before stability, I was always in a rush, rushing to work, rushing to pay bills, rushing to catch up, rushing to survive. But saving my first $10,000 taught me something profound. Time is not an enemy when you are stable. Time becomes an ally. Time grows your investments. Time compounds your discipline. Time reduces your stress. Time expands your opportunities. And with that shift, I stopped rushing everything. I began to slow down. I began to notice things: the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the way steam rises from a cup, the subtle shift in wind before rain, the sound of footsteps on pavement, the patterns in people's behavior, the small kindnesses from strangers, the beauty in ordinary moments. And with that slowing came a deeper presence, a presence that changed the quality of my life in ways money never could. But now I want to take you to the exact moment everything came full circle. I was standing in a grocery store aisle again, the same aisle where years earlier I had hesitated between the $8 coffee and the $15 one. Only this time, I wasn't hesitating. I picked up the coffee I genuinely enjoyed. Not the cheapest, not the most expensive, the one I wanted, and I realized something so small but so profound that it nearly brought tears to my eyes. I was choosing based on preference, not fear. And that, right there, was the definition of freedom. Financial freedom emotional freedom, psychological freedom, they all begin in small moments like that. Moments where you choose what you want instead of what fear allows. I stood there for a long time, holding that bag of coffee, realizing that a single decision years earlier had led to this quiet moment of peace. And that's when I finally understood saving your first $10,000 is not a financial milestone, it's an emotional graduation. It's the moment your identity shifts from I can't to I can, from I hope things don't fall apart to I trust myself to rebuild, from life is happening to me to life is happening with me. And now, standing here as the man who lived through all of it, I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Everything changes after your first $10,000. Not because the money itself is magical, but because of who you become on the journey. The strength, the patience, the clarity, the discipline, the self respect, the calm, the ability to breathe without fear, the identity shift that rewires your entire relationship with life. You're not just building savings, you're building a foundation for your future self, a foundation strong enough to hold dreams, a foundation stable enough to weather storms, a foundation you can stand on for the rest of your life. And if you're still climbing toward your first $10,000, I want to tell you something gently but firmly. Keep going, even if it's slow, even if it feels pointless, even if you fall off track, even if you have to start over again and again. The number is not the goal. The person you become on the way to the number, that's the goal. And when you finally reach it, you won't just look at your bank account and smile. You'll look at yourself and whisper, I made it. I built this. I built me. And your entire life will change in the quietest, deepest, most permanent way possible.